Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. In this episode, we're talking about the art of delegating management functions in your private practice. And really, we're talking about delegating functions, and sometimes that's a management, and sometimes that's just other things that you're trying to delegate. I personally believe this is where private practice owners struggle, and I'll be very transparent. I have a very tough time delegating anything that is in my sphere of excellence. And so when I do something very well, honestly, it pains me to see someone else do it because it's not to my specificity. And we have to recognize that each person is different, how they do it, what they do, etc. And there is nothing more painful than me delegating something to you and me critiquing everything I would have done different. And that's why we struggle with delegation is a lot of the times we're delegating things that are either within our sphere of excellence or are not within someone else's sphere of excellence. And I always ask myself, don't just look at what you're trying to delegate, but look at what someone else can do more for you. So it's interesting. There are things that are very easy for me to delegate. And usually it comes down to it's something that's outside of my sphere of excellence. And I have someone that thrives at the ability to execute it consistently every time. So what's an example of that? I'll give you a perfect example. So I like to do the initial recruiting. It's something really important to me that for one of my private practices, I not only want to do all of the job posting because I play in the fishing pond and I know how to tweak things, but I also enjoy the process of identification of match. And so I will utilize that first aspect in terms of what I call attracting the fish, catching the fish, reeling the fish in, and qualifying the fish. Okay, that's on me. I don't want to delegate that out. Every time I've delegated that out, I get upset because it's in my sphere of excellence. You're like, well, that doesn't sound hard. Why can't someone else do it? Because I do it with a precision knife and it never smells better when I'm done. And I'm just being honest. And so once I've reached the point where I'm like, hey, I got you, you got me, we're a fit. Then I bring HR in. And that's where Scott executes every next step. I'm not even involved. It's like run with it. Do the interview process, do the offer letter, do everything you need me, get me. And he knows how to take it from zero to hero from that. And together our process closes probably around 95% of candidates that reach HR are closed based on his success and based on my previous prior approval of getting the right people in place, setting the fundamentals of expectation, the foundation of what fit looks like. And so that's an example of when I can delegate, feel confident in delegating, etc. One of the things we sometimes delegate that is a failure is we'll delegate like, we'll just call it patient conversations or barriers with people. I don't want to be the bad guy. Well, sometimes that's our sphere of excellence. Or sometimes we don't have anyone who is within that sphere of influence. So what happens when you give a people pleaser a bunch of problem patients? Either nothing's going to go right, or it doesn't get resolved, or that person who's a people pleaser is just upset all the time and resents the company. So matching function is really critical. And I think that we have to look at all those different things. And so when we're prioritizing functions to delegate, because that might be the first thing you're thinking of, like, Brandon, I want to get back 10 hours of my week. And my first question to you is it about getting 10 hours back to work on your business? Or is it about 10 hours back for your own personal satisfaction? It's an important question. I'll be transparent. Ideally, it's about working on your business. 168 hours. If you got into owning a private practice to be on a sandy beach and not work, sorry. Hate to put it to you, there should have been a job description that says when you become an entrepreneur, you are birthing a child, and that child is part of your journey. And there will come a time when that child is in college and that child doesn't need you in the same capacity. But for the first 18 years, you're going to birth, manage, and make that thing go right. So just have clear expectations if you think that you're just going to give everything up. So the first thing I like to do is I like to conduct a time tracking study. I look at everything that I do in a week and I log it, and I'll use something like Clockify, where I literally clock in and clock out for every function I do for 40, 50, whatever hours. And then I need to ask myself, Brandon, is there anything I'm doing that I'm doing because it makes me feel good to do, but it is not needed? And I think sometimes we struggle with the prioritization. And I challenge you to look at it. So I recently was meeting with a practice, and the practice owner is like, hey, I am going to hire another person and I want them to take all the social media and all the stuff. And my viewpoint was, is this the right action? Do you really need that? Is there enough value in what you're getting for that social media action? Is that the best resource? And understanding she was just doing it because she thought she had to do it. Stop doing what you think you need to do. Really evaluate what you're supposed to be doing. What is needed? What is delivering ROI? And when someone else says, well, I do it because everyone's got to do it, I'm going to tell you, there are plenty of companies that don't. You have to figure out what's right for you. But in that time tracking study, I want you to figure out what's needed, what's wanted, what's desired as a function. Just assessing that workload, understanding what that workload looks like in that time tracking study. I want you to determine the functional value. What is the value versus what is the importance? Importance is what you put on it. Value is what it financially generates. We just, my chief billing officer reached out to me and goes, Brandon, I need you to look at this workflow. And it was a function list. And it was pure chaos. This employee created 30 hours of wasted time. Wasted time. Well, we got to do this because we got to do that. And parents are going to know and blah, 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 blah. And I bring this all up because they're putting an importance level on something that brings no value. No value. So once we've conducted our time study, we assess the workload. We determine the value versus importance. Now, one of the things in that value, I want you to calculate how much you want to make this year. I want to make $500,000. Okay. Then I want you to calculate how many hours you're going to work for that $500,000. And then I want you to come up with that hourly rate. And I want you to identify if that function you're doing is worth what you want to make per hour or not. And then I want you to put the value of what you want to pay for that function. And I want you to see if there is someone in that value range that has the skill set to do that. So we're analyzing the skills, the strength versus weakness of every single employee. We're looking at how each employee's sphere of excellence can generate function within that delegation process. I want you to also do me a favor. I want you to identify alternative ways to delegate functions. Could we delegate it to artificial intelligence? Could we delegate it to a workflow efficiency? Could we delegate it to a virtual assistant? Could we delegate it to a third-party company? Could we eliminate it? All those different things. Then I want you to prioritize that function list based on the expense and your return on investment study. And I want you to delegate up to 20% new functions per month and measure the impact and recalibrate. So as a practice owner, I want you to recognize that you taking something that is not within your sphere of influence and giving it to someone who is willing but does not have that skill set is going to backfire on you. You need to conduct your time tracking study, assess your workload, determine the functional value versus the importance, analyze the skills that are available at your fingertips internally and externally with strength and weakness, input, output. Identify alternative ways to delegate those functions. Prioritize your functions based on the expense return on investment study and delegate every month. What if you could delegate 20% new functions so you could work on your business instead of in your business? And again, this is personal to you. Measure impact, recalibrate. So for me, there are things I like to do. And even though you may say that ROI is not worth it, it's important to me. So guess what? I get to make that decision, and so do you. And my viewpoint is what I'm sacrificing is worth the sacrifice for me to do it. So I like to invoice all my own clients. I do. I like to be in charge of that. I like to be the face of that because that's an accountability relationship between me as an owner and the money of those I serve. I like to do that. I like to do my own recruitment. Those are two functions that I could easily delegate, but they're important to me. So that's okay. And then there's other things like HR. There's other things like customer service. There's other things along the way that I will delegate to others. But it's interesting because I still take pride in what I do. And I think a lot of what I do feels that what I do in my business sometimes is working on my business. So I see it in that way. So when I created the app myself for Growth Code Conference, I felt like I was not just working in my business, but I was working on my business. I was better understanding how to communicate everything within the schedule, relationships, building that experience, making sure it was aligned in a way that delivered an ROI in which it did. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And so I think as you look at sometimes the things that people think you should delegate, I might tell you not to delegate. Now, payroll, I'll delegate payroll. That's easy. So looking at those things, and you can still have checks and balances. But in order for us to delegate, we need to be able to evaluate talent, functional capacity, and alignment. So evaluating talent. When we're evaluating talent, we're looking at what are the natural attributes that exist? What can they do without any guidance? How can their talent currently produce? What is the opportunity of talent delivery? The next thing we look at is functional capacity. What can they functionally, are they capable? At what point is that capability leading to burnout? At what level? So someone may have the talent to do payroll. They've done it before. It's in their ecosystem. But functionally, they have too much on their plate, or functionally, it doesn't fit what they want to do in terms of their functional capacity. So functional capacity, in my opinion, is our motor and putting the right functions into our motor so that we have fuel. If we put the wrong functions into our motor, we will run out of fuel. Either they are not happy, something's off. And so alignment is the next piece. And alignment's really, really, really important. And so one of the recommendations when we're looking at delegating is looking at how does this relate with our talent pool, our functional capacity, but then alignment through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're not familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need to make sure that everything we're doing is in alignment. So the base of the pyramid for Maslow's hierarchy of needs is physiological needs. So physiologically, is this role hitting all of the needs? Is it financially meeting them? Is it time meeting them? Does it make them feel valued? Do they feel that their actual needs are there? And I think that sometimes we put people in a role where physiologically their financial need and what they can output from a functional capacity don't fit, and therefore we fail this alignment. Perfect example. You take a doctor, he wants to make a certain amount of money. He agrees that he should take that on. But once he starts producing that, he recognizes that he does not have the motor. His functional capacity, his motor is burning out because it was designed around the financial need, and we didn't take into account that functional capacity. The next thing in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is safety. Those safety needs, the feeling of security, stability, predictability, protection, freedom from fear, structure, order, law, limits. And I look at this and I say, hey, someone may not feel safe treating in your facility without others there. You have to meet so hey, I want you to come in at 7 a.m. and treat 3 new patients. And we don't recognize that those 3 new patients, that therapist or that clinician or that doctor, whoever we're talking about, that dentist, that hygienist, there's safety needs at question. Hey, I know you want me to come in 3 hours before the office opens, but I don't feel safe being in this office alone with a patient. It's a fair statement. Now, some people are like, I don't care. Bring it. I'm ready. But that's safety need, another safety need. So as you know, I'm big on compensation. And from a leadership standpoint, it is my duty to understand their safety needs. They may not be comfortable in a fee-for-service or a hybrid pay. They may need a salary in order to feel secure. So then I have to look if that model fits. Is that aligned? You know? Safety. Sometimes you're asking, so let me give you another example where safety would be assessed from a delegation standpoint. You want to delegate for your clinic director to lead the speech language pathology meetup meetings in which they go over everything. And within that realm is a family member of the clinical director. They may not feel safe being in a management role in correlation to that family member, whatnot. But again, understanding that piece is really important. As we move up the pyramid, we go from physiological needs to safety needs to social needs. This is where we look at giving and receiving acknowledgement. This is when we look at friendship, connectedness, belongingness. So I have one of the practices we have is a pediatric home health. You are probably, so I'm going to go through each one that we've covered so far so you know. So physiologically, they're going to be able to meet all of the physiological needs, most likely. It's high paying, stable, all those different. Safety is a wild card because you're going into people's homes that you don't know. So not every person is going to feel, not every nurse or doctor or clinician will feel safe doing that. Social needs. This is where I challenge if it works for them. They will not have the same connectivity, the same friendship, the same belongingness, the same feeling of direct input on a daily basis. So I have to challenge that social need. So I say it from a delegation standpoint. You're seeing 10 kids in a school alone and you want to delegate those 10 patients to another therapist. Guess what? You need to evaluate if they feel safe, if it meets their physiological needs, if it meets their social needs, how that's going to work for them. After social needs, we go to esteem needs. This is the feeling of achievement. This is the feeling of progress. This is the feeling of prestige, of reputation. I'm proud to be able to do this. I feel good about this. I feel good about myself doing that role. I just got asked by Brandon to take this over. That hits my esteem in a positive way. And then the last one at the top of this pyramid is self-actualization. This is the most important top of the pyramid. This is where self-fulfillment, this is where someone feels on a higher level they're transcendent. This is where reality of purpose is attained. I see how I'm creating change. I see the way that I'm leaving a mark on this world. So interesting. My uncle, very successful, and in his success, he still does not feel that he's reached his self-actualization and that legacy he's trying to create. So he's looking for ways to create that. It doesn't matter what he's accomplished in the past. Even though it met all those needs, he still is seeking self-actualization. So as we look at alignment, I want you to see, do I have the right talent? Do they have the right functional capacity? Are they aligned with Maslow's hierarchy of needs on a physiological way, on a safety way, on a social need way, on the esteem need way, and most valued self-actualization way? You get these together and you're going to see pure brilliance, truly. So here's the problem that a lot of you make. You find that job you want to delegate and you get all excited. And what do? You give the keys to the car away. Here you go. Have at it. And then you don't know what happened until they crash the car. Please don't do that. Let them drive the car, but don't give the keys. So when we're delegating, I want you to first, in that list of functions you're going to be delegating, I want you to put it out to people. Pick 5 or 6 people and see which functions interest others. Then I want you to have metrics of accountability to measure the way that you did it versus the way they did it. And give them 30 days to identify if they can meet that need while you're monitoring, mentoring, and pushing for that. And then every week, you want a check-in period with them. Every week, you're going to have a target for them. And that's how you don't give the keys away, because it's so critical. And I think that as we look at these things to delegate, the idea for us is to enhance others with roles and functions that complement your sphere of excellence, but play into their sphere of excellence. Now, sometimes delegation is outsourcing. So what are areas that I have a practice owner, she spends 25 hours a week of her own time to do medical billing. I keep telling her, I'm like, I hope this brings you joy. She's like, it's not. And I say, why do you not outsource it? She says, I don't want to give my keys to my castle. I said, all you need to do is have a weekly alignment to ensure that everything that you would do gets done effectively. And so I asked her, what are you hiding? And I think at the end of the day, here's what's interesting. She doesn't quite know what she would do if she took 25 hours a week off of her schedule. So it really comes down to she finds value in what she does. And same with me. I find value in my recruiting. I find value. What would I do if I didn't have recruitment? Is that more valuable? Is that within my sphere of excellence? So figure that out, because in order for you to fully delegate, you need to have a concrete thing that you want to fill that time with. You need to know in your soul that there is something you're going to do, and you need to know that what you're delegating will be okay, that you've figured out the right talent, the right functional capacity, the right alignment, and that you've delivered the car to drive, but you still have the keys. You know where that car is going. You're part of that journey with them. So don't be afraid. Make your list. Prioritize your time. Come up with your value per hour. These are all the recipes for you to be able to empower yourself to change the way that you function. Did you know that CEOs who delegate effectively generate 33% more revenue than those who try to do everything themselves? Very interesting. So 33% more revenue. Why? Because they're working on their business. So the reason why maybe I'm not willing to give up certain things is I'm not ready to take on that next working on my business. Maybe I've reached the functional capacity at that level. But it's interesting. Every time that I free up time and I begin, it's hard to start that next thing. But once I start it, oh my gosh, I am in it to win it. And my blood is pumping. So what if you could find something to work on your business with, delegating functions that are below that value proposition, identifying where your sphere of excellence will generate the next milestone of development for you. Figure that out. Identify that. Because now I'm motivated. Hey, Brandon, what could you do with 10 hours a week of time? And could you generate 33% more revenue this year based on 10 hours a week of more time? I bet I could. The question is, would it fulfill me? Would it meet my self-actualization needs? So I still have to know, how does this translate to Maslow's hierarchy of needs for me? John Maxwell is someone that I look up to. And I love this quote he gave, which is, delegation is not about getting rid of work. It's about growing people while growing your business. Let's dissect that. Delegation's not about getting rid of work. Not about getting rid of work. It's about growing people. So can someone do that function better? Can someone grow that function for you? Can it grow your business? What are the things you need to buy in to believe? And one of the things that I would say with delegation, one of the ways that I've really enhanced delegation is utilizing technology. So I am a huge fan, advocate, user, trainer, the whole bit of Monday.com. That is my delegation software. I use it for all our task management, automation, accountability, key metrics, the whole bit. We've got a HIPAA compliant version. We integrate that with all different things. And that tool helps me feel connected to the functions that I am giving up. The best way to delegate is to know you have the right team, the right accountability, the right timeline, and that you're tracking the change you want to see in that area. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and I would be beyond grateful if you would like us, subscribe, share it with all your friends, share it with your private practice community. We are trying to create a vehicle of change, and this podcast can lead us to the next gear. So tune in on YouTube, listen to us anywhere podcasts are streamed, and don't forget, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you loved this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.